Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
Well, I have a treat for you. Her name is Melissa PINI, and she is the owner and creator of Map Keys Yoga, LLC, and it's in Michigan, right near the Detroit area. And she is just such a splendid yoga teacher and yoga master and all Reiki master and all these things that you would just love to be yourself. But the nice part is that she she writes a great article. You really should be sure to read in Boomer Times her monthly articles. They're just spectacular, and I hope you will, because you'll learn a lot from it. So welcome to our show, Melissa PINI.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, and hello to all the listeners out there.
Yes, and we're so glad that you're on. And I know that you had an experience. You're always taking classes. And why do you take classes? You seem to know it all.
Well, I don't know about that, but I do believe that it's very important to stay up to date. And I want to be able to offer to my students and those that come to practice at the studio the most the most up-to-date information. And in order to do that, I have to keep learning myself. So I think it's very important to continue with certifications and different learning programs to not only be able to continue to help other people, but to make sure that I'm providing information that's safe and accurate and able to provide the knowledge that I know that my students and others are really looking for.
And so you said that you were dealing with boomers. What is your classification for boomers as compared to elders?
Well, recently I took a course for boomers, and a lot of the students that I have are older, and I love working with that population because not only do I feel like I can learn from them, but they're usually more excited and they want to learn, and I find it so invigorating and inspiring to be around, the older people. And when I think about a boomer, I just, I think about, if I think about age-wise, it's like, my parents and that kind of thing. And when I have my certifications, this course is actually also renewing my personal training license. So I'm a certified personal trainer and a registered yoga teacher. And so, every year and, even every 3 years, you have to take courses just to stay up to date and keep your license active. And I'm also doing a yoga therapy program, too, and where we learn, the therapeutic approaches to teach the practice. And it's all about finding ways to teach certain things that mimic your daily life. So if we think about, for example, why might we teach in a personal training setting squats? Or in yoga, why would we teach a chair pose? Well, if we think about how many times we get up and down off the ground or up and down off a chair, a sofa, even the toilet, if we're not engaging the proper muscles, then we're more prone to injury. We might hurt the back, those types of things. But if we're engaging those glute muscles, the stabilizers of the legs, then we're able to do these really things with more ease and with more strength.
So you teach that, is what you're saying. So it doesn't come naturally, I guess, for someone. That's how they can get hurt. But if they knew more, they could watch out.
Right. And I think that kind of goes with anything. The more we continue to learn, then the safer we are in our daily life and in our activities and our other practices.
So the people who come to you, and I know that Detroit, the whole area where you are, was so cold this past winter. How do they get motivated to get up, get out, go in their car, get all these heavy clothing on, and then they come there, then they get all the heavy clothing off? And what motivates them? I know you do, but
I think it's the community. I have a lot of friends that come together, so it's like a meetup place. Everyone comes with their friends, and those that come just without a friend, they come solo, they make new friends in the class, and it's that joining of community. It brings a lot of motivation, and it's inspiring to be around other people that want to learn as well, and it's all about just trying to be the best version of yourself. And I always say at our yoga shala, we're all Kalyana Mitras, which is a Sanskrit word for friends. You know, we're all friends there for the same reason, for finding peace and relaxation and community and building strength, internal and external.
Okay, so are they embarrassed because they can't do as well as some other people? How do you handle that?
Well, I always, you know, we're all friends in the place, and there's never really any need to be embarrassed because, you know, everyone has their strengths and everyone has their weaknesses, myself included. And it's all about finding that place where you know that you're accepted as you are, and you know we're there as a yoga family, and nobody judges anyone else that comes in. Everybody has their own battles going on, I think, and it's just being accepting and knowing that everyone's on their own path and their own journey. And it's that respect of acknowledging that. And
that's part of the yoga teaching, isn't it?
I believe so.
That's what you always say, anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have so much friendship. That's what you like to do. Well, what is the practice of being, actually? Is what you're talking about?
The practice of being. So I think when we come to the practice of yoga, it's an internal and an external practice. So it's a place that we can come to reflect upon the way that we're feeling. And I always like to think that when you come to your mat, it's like your own personal sanctuary. So the moment you step onto your mat, it's your time, your place of self-care. And I think when we get in trouble is when we don't feel things that are going on within our body or our mind. So if we're experiencing something perhaps, you know, off the mat in the world type of thing, like coming to the mat and allow yourself to feel, to be just as you are, and to accept that. And if thoughts come up when you're on your mat, you notice them and you acknowledge them, but it's the not forming attachment to the thoughts or the emotions. It's acknowledging them, but knowing when it's time to just release them and come to the breath and pause in that space. And there's a whole world within the breath, I think. So just allowing yourself to just be as you are. And just the first step is to just notice the breath. And pausing in that space to just be is where I think a whole other world is.
And can you teach that to someone? Because you have it so done. You're there. You're really there. But someone comes in and they don't know what you know. How do you just talk and then they get it? How do you teach this?
Well, when someone first comes in, I really like to, for example, like if we're going to do a meditative type practice, which all of the classes that I teach do have a form of meditation in them. And for example, anybody, when you're just sitting down, for example, is just start by just pausing in your space and then use your senses to start to draw yourself more into the moment. So begin by noticing first where you're sitting, and perhaps notice your sitting bones rooted to your space, and maybe begin to notice the sounds that are around you, maybe any sense of smell or the taste within your mouth, those types of things, and then using those senses to draw you deeper into the moment. And then once you start to notice all those external sounds and types of taste in the mouth, and that, then start to notice where you feel your breath. Notice if you feel the breath like in the belly, or maybe you feel it more in the chest, and starting to follow the breath like on a journey as you inhale and exhale, and try to send the breath down deep into the belly. And if we start with those gentle types of practices first, then we're able to come more to the moment and to realize that even if you have to say it to yourself, in this moment, everything is okay. In this moment, everything is okay. It keeps you in the space where you can start to connect more deeply with the breath, and then relaxation comes a little bit easier.
So that it's all the breath, isn't it? It's like I'm breathing right now, but I'm not thinking about it.
Right.
And I should be, right?
Well, I think the way I started that last article for the incredible Boomer Times magazine, you have no idea how much I love that magazine myself. But yeah, it's just you kind of pause and just even notice if you're breathing. How many times when we're in our daily life are we holding our breath, or when you get nervous, or in a stressful situation type of thing, are you really truly breathing, like inhaling through the nose and exhaling out the mouth, or are you holding your breath? And that's something I think a lot of us can just start right there to become more aware.
So yoga actually is all about breath rather than the movements of what you're doing. Is that right?
It is. The breath is the very first starter of the practice. I mean, for sure, the asana, which are the poses, they're there for specific reasons as well. We do the poses so that we can open up the body. If you take it even a little bit deeper in the sense that when you're in a certain pose, you start to notice your breath, and if you're breathing, and if you're not breathing in that pose, you've gone too deep, and what might be coming up when you're in that pose, and how does that translate to maybe the way you think when you're not on your yoga mat. So, the poses are beneficial, but the breath is the one thing that sets yoga apart from any other exercise, and it's that breath awareness and that breath connection. And the breath is the one thing that we always have. So if we think about friends that perhaps don't have the ability or the physical mobility to practice a yoga pose, well, what's something that they can do that's still yoga? And that's the breath. And that's why we have pranayama techniques, which are the different breathing exercises to practice yoga. That's where it all starts.
That's really something. So now we know that football players and athletes are doing yoga.
Sure, if they're breathing.
Yeah. And why do you think it's become so popular for them?
The breath is something that can calm down the system. So I think for sure, absolutely, athletes can benefit from yoga. I mean, I have a few athletes that are, weightlifters that practice at the Shala. And the breath is what is going to set apart everything and allow you to draw yourself into that state of relaxation. So, if you're a football player or someone that partakes in those types of sports events, you need to be centered. You need to be grounded and have a game plan and a focus. And by practicing yoga, you establish that focus. And
that's interesting.
Yeah,
and
extremely beneficial.
That's what they get, right? You start them with that.
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly.
maybe it'll improve their game.
I believe it would. At least those the athletes that do practice at the Shala, they have said that. Oh my gosh, the first thing that I always hear when someone comes to practice is, oh my gosh, yoga is a lot harder than I thought. Because even though we think when we hear the word yoga, a lot of people think, oh, it's doing some crazy pose, right, on this sticky mat. Well, if you think about the breath and the breathing and the meditative practices, those are actually the ones that are way much harder than those poses, because it's the trying to silence the mind and keep yourself focused and in the moment. And it's natural for the mind to wander, and everyone has problems with that, I think, but it's the not forming attachment and trying to stay in the moment, to follow the breath and not be thinking about, what are you going to have for dinner later, or things I need to buy at the grocery store, those types of things.
So when you're doing this, does your mind wander? How do you control your mind wandering?
It does happen, of course. I mean, it's funny because people always, or my students or even friends are like, oh my goodness, you're a yoga teacher, and, you still get stressed out, or, those types of things. And it's like, yeah, of course, I'm still a human. And I think it's just the noticing of when that's starting to happen for me. So I notice, and that's what yoga does. It brings you to that awareness where you notice, oh my gosh, okay, my mind is wandering, or, I'm not being my best self in this moment. And then making that choice to draw yourself back to that humbling place of awareness. And we use, if you think about in the practice, drishti. Drishti is your focal point, sort of like what the ballerinas use when they're dancing to like spot. It's the same concept. So when the mind begins to wander, you might be in a posture or even sitting in a chair or on your mat, and you focus on something. So be it something in front of you that's not moving. Maybe you have a candle sitting in front of you, and you might watch the flame to keep yourself in the moment. Or even mala beads. I think we've talked about that before, where you can use a mala bracelet and use the bead, and as you go around this strand of beads, you can have a mantra that'll keep you focused and in the moment.
I remember when I was there at your Shala that you showed me what they were like. They're very pretty, and it's like it's not the same, but when people were very religious, like in Greece and all, they had these beads that they kept rotating around their hands.
Right. So, and it's the same concept. It can be anything you want it to be. It's a tool. It's like
to concentrate. So it helps you concentrate. Is that what it is?
Exactly.
Huh. Okay. Now, something that I think was really very impressed with you is that you know, from time to time you've had some physical ailments, and yet you never let that stop you. Somehow you are able to work around it, and that's probably very important for people to know that even though they have a bad back or they have something else, and they're in pain, how do they get by that? I mean, how did you get by that?
That's a really good question. I love that question. I do, because by default in life, you know, we'll all experience some sort of pain, be it, you know, physical, mental stress. And the way that you can overcome that is just starting where you are and respecting your body and giving yourself permission to recognize that you're experiencing these pains and this discomfort, and to be okay with that and not try to push yourself beyond your means. And it's all a journey. So yoga is a practice that will meet you where you are. And I have a lot of students that have limited mobility, and you know, they'll say, "Oh, I'm not where I want to be." Well, the beauty of yoga is that it'll meet you where you are today. And that's how I've also overcome different ailments is, you know, you work with what you have, and from a place of gratitude, just being grateful that perhaps you can even just sit there and breathe is a beautiful thing. And it's all about self-love and practicing that self-love and respect for your body, because the body, I believe, is a temple for your soul. And how you speak to yourself, you should be the same way that you would speak to someone that you love.
That's right.
That's very important.
You're supposed to love your body, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you only get one body, right?
Well, I think so, but so, and we never really talk in terms of that. That's what makes it so nice to hear from you. So we have to love our body, every little fat cell or any little piece we have in our body, right?
Every little bit, yes, because it's yours, and it's a beautiful thing, and that's what makes yoga so beautiful, and that's what makes people so beautiful, is that we're all different.
Yeah, and
it's very important to see that and to recognize differences and know that that's beautiful.
Well, you're so much into the breath, and are all yoga teachers? Is that the most important part of the yoga for most teachers, or is it just you?
I think it varies. I definitely think it does vary. The reason why I have that deep connection of starting the practice with the breath is back when I first began yoga, and I've been practicing yoga since I was a child, and it wasn't the asana, the poses, that brought me to the practice. It was the meditative aspect and the breathing. So that has transferred over through every part of my life. And as we just said with injuries, there have been times when, you know, I've torn something or I've injured something, and I wasn't able to physically do the actual practice. And so the one thing that I could do to keep myself in that place of self-care and self-love was the meditative practices like the breath. And it might vary from teacher to teacher, depending on their background, their history, and maybe what type of style practice drew them in. It really varies, and that's why I think when you're looking for a yoga teacher to practice at a certain yoga space or shala, yoga teachers are everywhere, and it's all about finding the teacher that you can connect with.
And I was thinking about animals. Of course, you have this wonderful dog named Lady, and I have this dog named Charlie. And
yes.
It's so beautiful to watch, at least Charlie sleeping, and he's just really out of it, and you can hear him snoring sometimes.
I love that. Animals are everything. Absolutely everything.
Right. Well, I guess we can learn a lot from the animals, but...
I agree, absolutely.
And I know you've tried to practice yoga with Lady, which I think is kind of funny.
I do. It's so funny. She's so smart. I mean, I don't want to start talking. I could go on the whole entire conversation about my puppy, but she's so smart that, I'll tell her, hey, Lady, show him over your downward dog, and she knows what that means. And
right.
She'll do her yoga.
Right. I know you've been very patient with her, and you do that.
Yeah.
But, okay, so do you have couples who are coming together? I mean, is that a good couple thing to do?
Oh, yeah. I actually have tons of couples that come together. Oh, my goodness, yes. And there's so many things you can do, like partner yoga. It's really fun to do work with couples because then as you're teaching them how to do these fun things, then they can take that home. And I do have one couple in particular that practices at the Shala, and they're super inspiring. And they always come in and then tell me their stories of, oh, Melissa, I took this practice that you showed me, and we did it together at home, and then we added this to it. And so I learned from them too, and it's really special to work with couples, and it's so fun. It brings me so much joy, the entire aspect of it.
Yeah, that sounds great. It's interesting that I have a massage, and there are people who have massages together. I mean, two people working on two people at the same time. I've not done that, but
oh, wow.
But for me, the meditation, which I do have a meditation tape, I love that. But I love my massage also because I usually fall asleep. It is so relaxing. But do people fall asleep when they're doing yoga?
I have had that happen before, yeah. So I do some restorative type course or classes, and we get all comfy and cozy in there, and I always let them all know that this is their time on their mat. So if they don't feel comfortable with perhaps a pose I'm offering or something doesn't fit good with their body, then just do whatever works for them to feel comfortable and cozy and at peace in their practice. And I have had a few people that, especially during the winter when it's a little bit more cold, that grab some blankets and we have the bolsters, and during a specific asana, a pose, they might be so relaxed in that posture that they fall asleep, and this is perfectly okay.
Right. That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's funny.
So, do you have meditation tapes too? Or, do people, I know I listen to one. Do you listen to a meditation tape?
I have a couple apps. There's these meditation apps. I think there's one called Insight Timer. I know a couple of my students use that one.
What's it called?
What's it called? It's called Insight Timer.
Okay.
Right, and it has guided meditations on there. Those are, I think there's also singing bowls and meditative music. Those are always nice to listen to at nighttime. They're good timers to use to help us to stay in the moment, to be relaxed and focus on the breath.
Well, it's interesting. When it's so cold, I don't know how you can focus on the breath when you're trying to keep warm.
It's definitely a challenge, but there are different heated breath practices that you can do. There's one called the Ujjayi breath, and it's a heating breath. And so for that type of breath, I'm not sure we've discussed this one before on the show, but so for example, find your comfortable seat, and then when you inhale and exhale, you want to breathe in through the nose and then out through the mouth, but with the lips closed. So with the lips closed, then you take your tongue and you place it behind the front teeth, about the place where your upper gums and the back of your front teeth meet.
Yeah.
And then as you inhale through the nose, you'll exhale into the back of the throat, like you're swirling the oxygen around in the back of the throat, and it starts to warm up the body from the inside out. It's a audible type breath. So I've heard some yoga teachers say it sounds like Darth Vader.
That's funny. Well,
yeah.
So, Melissa, we have run out of time. It's so lovely to talk to you, and I'm sure that you have so many little tidbits that everybody grabs onto. You're just such a, you're a Wonder Woman, you know that. Wonder Woman. And thank you. Yeah, thank you for calling us all the way up from Michigan and telling us about what you love and what you do, and we're so happy that you get to do this. And I just got your wonderful article, which is going to be beautiful on the Reiki, so that'll be in our April issue.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to hearing from you, and if any listeners ever want to reach out, feel free to email me. I love getting notes from yogis.
Right. Thank you, Melissa, very much. Okay?
Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.
You too, Melissa. Bye.
Namaste. Bye.